Okay, so typical reduction strategy on this one. Now these are a challenge, these clunky pieces, but you know, sometimes these thin flakes are just as challenging or even more challenging than these clunky ones because they break so easily. And when using soft hammers, you get very thin flakes, and then when you try to work these, you just end up snapping those. So I'll work one of each. I'll work a thin flake and a thick flake. I might not be able to get both on the same video, but I'm going to work a thin one and a thick one. Okay. There may have been an ancient impact fracture there that caused a little weakness in this material, which makes it pretty short, but I can still do something with it. It'll just be short. Less than 2 inches. The smallest arrowhead I've made on video is, this might be it here. There is a seam in there. Okay. Still pretty clunky. Now this is like fine-grained rhyolite. That's what it reminds me of. But they also call that kind of material coarse-grained, so it can be confusing. So for a rhyolite, it's fine-grained, but in general, these are coarser grained than the flint and chert, the high-grade flint and chert, which means the crystals in here are bigger. Now, that's if it is a type of rhyolite. I'm not sure. I don't think it's a petrified wood or something like that, but I don't know. I'm sure someone will know more about this type of material. I don't want to make it too narrow because it would be too difficult to hold. What I'm going to need to do is get rid of most of this powdery cortex early on so I can see what I've got. Now there's not much convexity there, but I think I can still run some flakes. I'm going to try to hit this platform here to get rid of some of this powdery cortex. So that's my main concern first, is to clean off the cortex. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm staying in the frame there. I'm focusing more on the workpiece. Okay, so the basic strategy is try to maintain as much surface area and strike platforms that are strong enough to do what I want, but just barely strong enough. I don't want to overdo it on the platforms because I lose too much width. So I'm just creating platforms that are just barely good enough. Since it is a fairly small piece. Not unusual at all for true arrowheads, but with a tough material, the smaller it is, the harder it is to hold, and the faster the strikes have to be. Now see, with this material, I was hoping it would run deeper than that, but it's just the nature of the material. It's not bad. I mean, these flakes are traveling pretty well. I'm going to have to make it more narrow. So the strategy is to do the minimum necessary, and if it doesn't work, beef it up a little more. If that doesn't work, beef it up a little more. No overkill. As the least amount of overkill as possible. Now this platform is strong enough, but it's hard to hold a workpiece, steady enough. So it's hard to see, but that angle is lost. When I'm striking, I'm losing the angle, and it's just not peeling that flake off. So I may have to back off and come back up. But if this next series of strikes isn't going to work, there we go. Now that piece went flying across the room, so I can't get it. Alright, so that leaves me a good opportunity for the next one. And I held it there on purpose, probably stopped it a little bit short, but I just wanted to see it. I just wanted to catch that flake to see how thick it was. It's a pretty good thickness for such a small piece. That one's a good illustration of how to tackle a step fracture by hitting just right to catch the side of that step fracture and hopefully take some of it off. Have it wrap in the other direction or toward the direction of the step fracture and just make it look like there was never a step fracture there, although there is some left. It's very minimal. I can run flakes through there pretty easily. Okay, so now it's just a matter of thinning it down after most of the cortex is removed. Thinning it down, straightening it. Still using very hard strikes. Making sure I hit the previously ground edges. I usually just grind in one direction, and what that does is it abrades and creates a slight bevel at the same time. If I was just doing this, it would just be simply abrading, but this is creating a small bevel and then also getting into these little depressions in there too, because sometimes, wiping away weak spots between the depressions can isolate these opportunistic platforms. Alright, so I'm going to try a smaller flaker now that I'm down to this size. And I've lost some length. Still about 1 inch. This area might give me a little bit of trouble, but it looks okay. So this is a 1/4 inch. And I'll go down to the 5/30 seconds. Then down the ends first. Hope I haven't been too close to the workpiece. Okay, so I'm going to straighten out that tip by removing mass on top here. Okay, so if I wanted to cache this, I would just save it at this point. I would save it at this stage. And I think a lot of the Native Americans would save these preforms at this stage as well, because there's a lot of these out there. A lot of preforms at this stage where the edges are, you know, ground, or they feel smooth, and just a lot of rough preliminary flaking, mostly percussion. Now with this size of preform, it's very difficult to get percussion flakes on it, but I think they were still, you know, using hammerstone percussion, hard hammer, with you know, small points of impact to shape these, and then use antler pressure after this. I'm going to use indirect percussion, but I think at this stage Native Americans were using mainly pressure, with maybe some indirect percussion, but at this stage, you know, it's easy to or easier to pressure flake it than anything else. An antler tine, if I were to use an indirect percussion tool with it made of antler, it would not be able to remove very good flakes because this material is so tough. But if you can get the right platforms and with a strong pressure flaking technique, you can remove pressure flakes and shape this with pressure. But anyway, I'm going to thin this down with percussion. Because percussion can get this very thin. Okay, I'm going to clean up the edges and do some shaping at the same time, so I can't be talking too much during that process. It's hard to concentrate, so I'll just kind of whittle it down and shape and thin at the same time. And I'll be creating opportunistic platforms with the brushing technique with the brader. Now it's been mentioned to me a couple times that I could be stopping the flakes with my finger, and that's probably true on some cases, especially with material that doesn't run good flakes. I could be stopping some of them by holding it there, but it's very light pressure, if any, when I'm striking. Most of my holding is distributed. The holding force is distributed between all my fingers instead of just like concentrating in the middle or concentrating on the ends or whatever. So that in that way I can reduce the pressure on each finger if I make sure I do even pressure all the way around when I'm holding it. But yeah, if I were to strike and allow every flake to travel freely, I could probably get longer flakes in general. But that's just one more thing to think about if I'm worried about where my fingers are exactly. I'm worried enough as it is to avoid striking my fingernails and stuff. I've struck my fingernail a couple of times, but it wasn't bad. But yeah, most of my concentration is just keep my fingers out of the way on a small workpiece like this. Now these little islands of step fractures can get pretty bad. So what I'll do is I'll leave it. I won't remove too many flakes, and I'll come back to that later when I make it more narrow. See, I've got to lose, to get rid of some of that, I'm going to probably have to lose a lot off this edge, and then this edge also includes that step fracture area. So once I lose this, I'll have a better opportunity to run flakes there. But we'll see. I might not take that action. I don't think that far ahead. It all depends on what happens. If I end up breaking a big piece off of this side, I won't be able to take much off of that side. Okay, I'll stop there before the camera cuts off and continue reducing on the next video.